Dear listeners, as usual I shall relate to you, based entirely upon the Arabic Muslim sources, the moral characteristics of the alleged best male ever created, who, according to his followers, is their perfect prophet, Muhammad. I would like also to address the cult followers of Muhammad, who may be shocked at my revelations, by telling them, do not threaten me with death, destruction, insults, and the torments of Allah's hell. I am only a messenger who is enlightening you with facts based entirely upon your own Arabic scriptural sources, Arabic being my mother's tongue. If right is on your side, all you have to do is to disprove me. Hence I tell you very politely, put up or forever shut up. Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah, the famous Islamic scholar, Allama, theologian and logician, who is referred to as Shaykh al-Islam, a title of superior authority on Islamic knowledge, asserted that there are many false prophets, such as Musaylimah the liar, a contemporary of Muhammad. Taymiyyah concluded that many of these so-called prophets are, in fact, possessed, and that the only way to determine the authenticity of any prophet is by examining his biography, seerah, and deeds, and see if he be found worthy of the title. Let us together use Taymiyyah's parameters regarding Muhammad and find out what the result will be. Muhammad in his Quran forbids his male followers from being in contact with their polluted females when they are in menses, having their period. Al-Baqarah 2.222. They ask thee concerning women's courses, say, they are a hurt and a pollution. So keep away from women in their courses and do not approach them until they are clean. Al-Ma'idah 5.6. O ye who believe, if you are in a state of ceremonial impurity, bathe your whole body. But if you are ill, or on a journey, or one of you cometh from offices of nature, or you have been in contact with women, and you find no water, then take for yourselves clean sand or earth, and rub therewith your faces and hands. According to Muhammad's verse, washing with sand and earth is cleaner than touching a woman. Sahih al-Bukhari 1.319, narrated by Zainab bint Abi Salama. Salama said, I got my menses, nifas, while I was lying with the Prophet under a woolen sheet. So I slipped away, took the clothes for menses and put them on. Allah's Apostle said, have you got your menses? I replied, yes. Then he called me and took me with him under the woolen sheet. Salama further said, the Prophet used to kiss me while he was fasting. The Prophet and I used to take the bath of janaba, meaning ritually impure due to sexual intercourse or semen discharge, from a single pot. Muhammad was rarely averse to breaking each and every one of his instructions to his followers in his Quran. He allowed himself all human liberties while he imposed upon his followers an enormous number of restrictions, reducing their existence to be servile, submissive, and joyless creatures in life in expectation of his promised reward in the afterlife. Sahih al-Bukhari 1.298, narrated by Aisha. The Prophet and I used to take a bath from a single pot while we were junub. During the menses periods, he used to order me to put on an izar, which is a dress worn below the waist, and used to fondle me. While in i'tiqaf, that is reciting the Quran in a solitary manner, he used to bring his head near me, and I would wash it while I used to be in my periods, menses. Sahih al-Bukhari 1.309, narrated by Aisha. None of us had more than a single garment, and we used to have our menses while wearing it. Whenever it was soiled, with the blood of menses we used to apply saliva to the blood spot and rub off the blood with our nails. Sahih al-Bukhari Hadith 1.497, narrated by Maymuna. The Prophet used to pray while I used to sleep beside him during my periods, menses, and in prostration his garment used to touch me. Sahih al-Bukhari 9.639, narrated by Aisha. The Prophet used to recite the Quran with his head in my lap while I used to be in my periods, having my menses. Sahih al-Bukhari Hadith 1.299 narrated by Abdul Rahman bin al-Aswad on the authority of his father. Aisha said, whenever Allah's Apostle wanted to fondle any one of us during her periods, menses, he used to order her to put on an izar and start fondling her. Aisha added, none of you could control his sexual desires as the Prophet could. Aisha's statement is interesting, since it is obvious that Muhammad could not control his desires, and that is why he needed to enjoy the bodies of his women even when they were polluted. Moreover, based on what experiences did Aisha know about the sexual abilities of other men? Although Muhammad allowed his followers a maximum of 4 wives during his lifetime, it is estimated that he was married to about 66 females. It is recorded that just before he died, he had 9 wives. Muhammad's sexual desires and infidelities are very well documented in the hadiths and are reflected just as faithfully in Muhammad's Quran. On one occasion when Muhammad had the desperate urge to have sex with his beautiful and young Coptic Christian sex slave Maria, he told his wife Hafsa, the daughter of Umar ibn Khattab, that her father wanted to see her. She accordingly left the house to do so. It just happened that that was her slotted day to sleep with Muhammad. Knowing him well enough regarding his need to have sex, she had second thoughts and returned to her house to find Muhammad having sex with Maria in her own bed. Justifiably, she got extremely upset and would not be consoled by Muhammad's promise that if she kept her mouth shut about his infidelity, he would not have sex with Maria again. Hafsa told all his wives about his adultery, and they all revolted against his incessant philandering. As usual with Muhammad, he concocted a made-to-order revelation, Surah Al-Tahrim 66.1 to 11, and dropped this alleged new revelation on them, wherein Allah, his ever accomplice in crimes, chastises Muhammad for trying to please his wives by not sleeping around. Hence Allah threatens the wives to get in line, lest Muhammad divorces them and they all end up in his hell. Followers of Muhammad who are listening, be you male or female, what would you honestly do or think if your partner was having illicit sex in your own bed while you had been away and you found them in the act? How could any of you excuse Muhammad's behavior, considering how much you revere and slavishly try to emulate him as a paragon of virtue? Can you ever be honest with yourselves when reading about Muhammad's dissolute characteristics, not written by Zionists, Jews, Christians, Hindus, or even enemies of Islam, but based entirely upon the Arabic Islamic sources only? For how long and how far are you willing to delude yourselves by denying all facts and realities? Even the young teenage Aisha was able to repeat one of the most astute statements in all of the hadiths whenever Muhammad concocted one of his made-to-order revelations by saying to him, Al-Suyuti, Volume 6, page 629, verily your Lord Allah is ever quick to fulfill your whims and desires. Bukhari, Volume 6, Book 60, number 311, narrated by Aisha. I used to look down upon those ladies who had given themselves to Allah's Apostle, and I used to say, can a lady give herself to a man? But when Allah revealed, you, O Muhammad, can postpone the turn of whom you will, of them, your wives, and you may receive any of them whom you will, and there is no blame on you if you invite one whose turn you have set aside temporarily. 33.51, I said to the Prophet, I feel that your Lord hastens in fulfilling your wishes and desires. Allah managed to hand down quite a few made-to-order revelations that sanctions Muhammad's personal pursuit of sex to the doubters around him. Interestingly, they have become part of the eternal, infallible word of the Quran, to be memorized by generations of Muslims for whom they have no possible relevance. Al-Ahzab 33.37. But when Zayd had accomplished his want of her, we gave her to you as a wife, so that there should be no difficulty for the believers in respect of the wives of their adopted sons, when they have accomplished their want of them, and that Allah's command shall be performed. No doubt, millions of young Muslims trying to outdo one another at memorizing the Quran may have wondered about what this verse means and why it is there. In fact, this is another revelation of convenience that Allah just happened to hand down at a time when Muhammad lusted after his daughter-in-law Zainab, a state of affairs that disturbed local customs. The verse commands Muhammad to marry Zainab, following her husband's gracious divorce. As for why these verses regarding Muhammad's personal lusts should be part of the eternal word of Allah is for you to think about. Al-Ahzab 33.50. O Prophet, surely we have made lawful to you your wives, whom you have given their dowries, and those whom your right hand possesses, out of those whom Allah has given to you as prisoners of war. And a believing woman, if she gave herself to the Prophet, if the Prophet desired to marry her, especially for you, not for the rest of the believers. We know what we have ordained for them concerning their wives, and those whom their right hands possess, in order that no blame may attach to you. This is another special command that Muhammad handed down to himself, that allows virtually unlimited sex, divinely sanctioned by Allah. One assumes that this revelation was meant to assuage some sort of disgruntlement in the community over Muhammad's hedonism. Al-Ahzab 33.51. You may put off whom you please of them, and you may take to you whom you please, and whom you desire of those whom you had separated provisionally. No blame attaches to you. This is most proper, so that their eyes may be cool, and they may not grieve, and that they should be pleased. This is in reference to the situation in which Muhammad's wives were grumbling about his preference for sleeping with a slave girl, Mary the Copt, in serfdom. Accordingly, Muhammad may sleep with whichever wife or slave he wishes without having to hear the others complain, as revealed in Allah's literal and perfect words to more than 1 billion Muslims. Al-Tahrim 66.1. O Prophet, why ban thou that which Allah hath made lawful for thee, seeking to please thy wives? Another remarkable verse of sexual convenience concerns the episode in which Muhammad's wives were jealous of the attention that he was giving to the Christian slave girl Maria. But, as he pointed out to them, to neglect the sexual availability of his slaves was against Allah's will for him. An-Nisa 4.24. And all married women are forbidden unto you, save those captives whom your right hands possess. Allah even permitted Muhammad and his men to rape married slaves, such as those captured in battle. Muhammad also passed down revelations from Allah that clearly condone sleeping with underage girls, even by the standard of puberty. Quran 65.4 lays down rules for divorce, one of them being that a waiting period of 3 months is established to determine that the woman is not pregnant. But the same rule applies to those too who have not had their courses, meaning girls who have not begun to menstruate. Al-Talaq 65.4. Such of your women as have passed the age of monthly courses, for them the prescribed period, if ye have any doubt, is 3 months, and for those who have no courses, it is the same. Sahih al-Bukhari Hadith 7.18, narrated by Ursa. The Prophet asked Abu Bakr for Aisha's hand in marriage. Abu Bakr said, "But I am your brother." The Prophet said, "You are my brother in Allah's religion and His book, but she is lawful for me to marry." Abu Bakr was so shocked at Muhammad's proposal to marry his child Aisha of 6 years that he told him, "But I am your brother." This word "but," which is in Arabic innama, brings out the true disbelief of Abu Bakr regarding the request, which of course turned out to be an unchallengeable demand. Abu Bakr's shock alone is evidence that what Muhammad was demanding was against the social norms of even the pigs of 1400 years ago. Since his companions actually believed him as the messenger of Allah, Muhammad was able to fulfill each and every one of his fantasies, lusts and desires. Muhammad was able to receive alleged divine verses sanctifying them with made-to-order revelations from his accomplice, the ever-obedient and willing Allah. Sahih al-Bukhari Hadith 7.88 narrated by Ursa. The Prophet wrote the marriage contract with Aisha while she was 6 years old and consummated his marriage with her while she was 9 years old, and she remained with him for 9 years, i.e. till his death. Sahih al-Bukhari 8.151 narrated by Aisha. I used to play with the dolls in the presence of the Prophet, and my girlfriends also used to play with me. When Allah's apostle used to enter my dwelling place, they used to hide themselves, but the Prophet would call them to join and play with me. The dolls were something to play with when Muhammad was not having sex with her. Ladies and gentlemen, be aware that dolls are forbidden in Muhammadan Islam for grown-ups. They were allowed for Aisha because she had not yet reached the age of puberty. Fath al-Bari, page 143, volume 13, asserts this. Muhammad's sexual antics are an embarrassment to those Muslims who are aware of them. This is particularly so for the Prophet's marriage to Aisha when she was 9 years old. The thought of a 52-year-old man sleeping and bathing with a child girl is intensely unpleasant, and it reflects the disgusting character of a sexual glutton rather than a holy man. Critics even allege that Muhammad was a pedophile. The critics are wrong, because he was not a serial child molester. Nonetheless, according to any logical, decent and moral person, Muhammad raped Aisha, since even if she were in puberty at age 9, the fact still remains that she was neither of age of consent, nor was she allowed to refuse her parents. Some Muslims respond by denying the hadith itself, which is a stupid mistake. The accounts of Muhammad having sex with a 9-year-old are no less reliable than those on which the 5 pillars of Islam are based. They have been an accepted part of tradition and did not become controversial until social mores began to change with the modern age. Zainab was in her 30s when she attracted the unquenchable lust of Muhammad. We don't know the age of Muhammad's sex slaves. They may or may not have been as young as Aisha, but there is no point in speculating. Thanks to Muhammad's lack of morals, sex with children became deeply ingrained in the Islamic tradition. For many centuries, Muslim armies would purge Christian and Hindu peasant villages of their menfolk and send the women and children to harems and the thriving child sex slave markets deep in the Islamic world. From Ayatollah Khomeini's book, Tahrir al-Masail, a man can marry a girl younger than 9 years of age, even if she is a girl still a baby being breastfed. A man, however, is prohibited from having intercourse with a girl younger than 9. Other sexual act such as foreplay, rubbing, kissing and sodomy is allowed. A man having intercourse with a girl younger than 9 years of age has not committed a crime, but only an infraction, if the girl is not permanently damaged. If the girl, however, is permanently damaged, the man must provide for her all her life. But this girl will not count as one of the man's 4 permanent wives. He also is not permitted to marry the girl's sister. End quote. Some clerics show relative mercy on underage girls by advocating a process known as thawing that Muhammad used with Aisha from when she was 6 years old till he penetrated her at age 9. According to a recent fatwa known as 23672, the Imam answers a question. My parents married me to a young girl who has not yet reached puberty. How can I enjoy her sexually? By telling the man that he may hug her, kiss her, and ejaculate between her legs. In summary, Islam's holiest texts portray Muhammad not as a perfect man, but a sexual hedonist. Not only did he become fat from indulging in food, but his pursuit of sex was no less gluttonous. On top of it all, he used personal made-to-order revelations from Allah to justify his debauchery to the gullible masses which, to this day, continue to be venerated and memorized as if they are the holiest of utterances. Muhammad's pursuit of Zainab, the wife of his adopted son, is almost as tough for Muslims to explain. This is because it not only raises a similar question of moral character, but also casts suspicion on whether his so-called prophecies were really divine revelations or dictates of personal convenience. So controversial was Muhammad's desire to marry his adopted son's wife that he had to justify it with a stern pronouncement from Allah on the very institution of adoption, which has had tragic consequences to this day. Verses 33.4 to 5 are widely interpreted to imply that Islam is against adoption, meaning that an untold number of children in the Islamic world have been needlessly orphaned, all because Muhammad's lustful desires for a married woman went beyond even what the other 6 wives that he possessed at the time and a multitude of slaves could satisfy. Muhammad forbade his 10 widows from remarrying, even making sure that this divine order was forever preserved in the eternal word of Allah, Quran 33.53. To add insult to injury, they were all summarily disinherited from Muhammad's estate by his successor, courtesy of another divine order given to Abu Bakr from Allah. I have only dealt with Muhammad's sexual mores without referring to other unsavory characteristics, such as deceptions, betrayals of trust, assassinations, mass murder, plunder, rape, etc., which will require many more chapters addressing each of them. I leave it to those who are listening or reading my reports to decide your judgment. As far as I'm concerned, I do not have the stomach for any more than these.